I know it might be a big if, but if Syracuse basketball gets the second half version of JJ Starling from last season, they will make the NCAA tournament.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, if JJ Starling plays like he did this season, as he did in the second half of last year, this team will make the NCAA tournament. That's right. Second half version of JJ Starling. By the way, we are going over the Syracuse basketball backcourt on today's episode. We're going to talk about the backup guards at the end of the podcast. We're going to talk about the true floor general leading this offense in Jaquan Carlos in the second segment of the show. But we're going to begin talking about JJ Starling. Before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Syracuse basketball season is almost here, right? How are we feeling? Are we excited? Leave a comment below your thoughts on Syracuse basketball this upcoming season. Is it tournament or bust this year? It's time. It's been 3 years. Don't want to make it a fourth, right? Well, if Syracuse basketball is going to make the NCAA tournament, they are going to need JJ Starling to perform like he did in the second half of last season rather than the first half, okay? JJ Starling is 6'4". He is a shooting guard. He is returning from last season. He spent his freshman season over at Notre Dame. And I'm very confident that he is going to be the starting shooting guard come Monday against Lemoyne. Now, he was very good in the exhibition. You could take that for what it's worth. Clarion is a Division II program, but JJ Starling in that one finished with 17 points on 7 of 9 shooting and 3 of 5 from three-point range. Again, you can take that for what it's worth. It was nice to see him perform well, but at the same time, if he performed poorly, it's not like I would be overreacting saying that we're screwed, right? It's one of those, take that for what it's worth. JJ Starling, first half and second half splits. All right. This is why I'm saying if they get the second half version of JJ Starling, they'll make the tournament. First half of last year, 11 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 43% shooting overall, 24% from 3. Not very good. Not completely terrible, but 24% from three-point range from your starting shooting guard playing over 30 minutes a game is not very good. But the second half version of JJ Starling, second half, ready for this? 16 points a game, so that's up 5 points. 3 rebounds, down 1, 1 assist, down 1. 48% shooting from the field, so that's up 5%. Most importantly, 36% from three-point range in the second half of last season. That was up 12 points, 12 percentage points higher than in his first half. If they get that version of JJ Starling, the JJ Starling who scored over 15 points a game, the JJ Starling who shot nearly 50% overall, 36% from 3, if he can do that over the course of the entire season, Syracuse basketball, in my opinion, is going to make the tournament. All right. They will make the tournament if he performs that way. Because when you look at Syracuse and you analyze their roster, their strengths and their weaknesses, right? I'll just give you a brief synopsis of what their strengths and weaknesses are. I think they got a much deeper team than they had last season. It's much deeper. You can go with a ton of different lineup combinations. And then Coach Autry said post-game after Clarion, the exhibition game on Saturday, that he's throwing out a bunch of different lineups in these exhibition games and experimenting. That's the time to experiment, right? They can go with a ton of different lineups that I think can be productive. But one of their weaknesses is, all right, well, who's their go-to scorer? Who is the go-to scorer on Syracuse basketball? I think a lot of players on the team can score, A lot of them can score. Who's the go-to scorer? Who is the guy we give the ball to when we just need a bucket? We need it. We need something to go in. Who do we give the ball to? You got to figure it's going to be J.J. Starling this season. I know he's expected to be one of the best players on the team, but the reason why he's an X-Factor is because if you get the second half version of J.J. Starling, then he becomes your go-to scorer in situations where you need a go-to scorer to be a go-to scorer. That is why it is imperative that they get the second half version of J.J. Starling, not the first half. So the question becomes, there's two questions, right? Why did he struggle in the first half? And how was he able to turn it around? And I have a couple of theories for this, and I'm fairly optimistic that what we get from J.J. Starling this season will be closer to what he did in the second half of last year. The first theory is very simple. He was recovering from shoulder surgery. I believe it was also on his shooting arm too. His shooting shoulder, if you will. Now, you don't need to be a basketball savant to know that in order to shoot a basketball, you need two functional shoulders. You need two functional ones, not one. You need two functional shoulders. Kind of necessary, right? You don't need to be a basketball savant to know that. Well, J.J. Starling, obviously recovering from surgery, he didn't shoot the ball well in the beginning of the season. It was bad. It wasn't just the percentages, like 24% from three is bad, but it was just the way it looked. The way his form looked, it was off. The way he was missing, it was missing badly. Sometimes guys are going to miss. Guys are going to miss shots. Even a guy like Steph Curry, sometimes he's going to have a night where he goes 2 of 15 from three. It's going to happen. But when they miss, is it something mechanical? Or is it something that, hey, you know what? For one night, the ball just didn't go in. It was in and out a lot. Maybe 1 or 2 bad shots. It happens. But it just didn't look good in the first half. But in the second half of the season, perhaps he was more recovered from the shoulder surgery. His form looked better. And as a result, the shot was going in. Again, you could take it for what it's worth, but 3 of 5 from three-point land has got to be pretty encouraging from the exhibition. I know it was against Clarion. I get it. I'm not overreacting. But, hey, it's nice that he went 3 of 5. His form looked good. So there's that. I'm optimistic that he's fully recovered from that surgery. He's going to be good to go right from the get-go, okay? Second reason why I think he struggled in the first half and was able to turn it around in the second half. He's adjusting to a new coach. He's adjusting to a new team. He's adjusting to a new environment, adjusting to a new system overall. He came from Notre Dame, a team that had a ton of guards on that team. I mean, there was like 3 or 4 of them in the starting lineup, and JJ was one of them, right? To Syracuse basketball last season where he's playing with a ball-dominant point guard. This isn't shade on Judah Mintz. That's just the reality. He was playing with a ball-dominant point guard in an ISO-heavy offense. It was a completely different offense than what he was used to at Notre Dame. So obviously he had to adjust. And you combine that with the shoulder injury that he was dealing with or recovering from the shoulder surgery, you can see why he struggled in the first half and then turned it around in the second half. J.J. Starling, for those that may not know, was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He was also a Syracuse basketball target. He's from our backyard. He's from Baldwinsville, New York. He's right across the street. He's right there. He went to Notre Dame. He was okay as a freshman. I would say probably more than okay. He was pretty good as a freshman. Struggled in the first half at Syracuse, but then found his form in the second half. I'm fairly confident they're going to get second half version or close to second half version this season from J.J. Starling. And if that's true, he becomes Syracuse's go-to scorer, and he will lead this team to the NCAA tournament. What are your thoughts on J.J. Starling this upcoming season? Do you think he's going to have a strong year? Leave a comment in the comment section below. All right? So that does it for J.J. Starling, who projects to be the starting shooting guard for Syracuse basketball this upcoming season. Now, coming up, we'll talk about Syracuse's new floor general, a player we haven't had in quite some time, a true floor general in Jaquan Carlos. That's coming next. Hey, Locked On Syracuse fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pooled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player that you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. And the best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content you were promised, you get your money back. Now, this week for Syracuse football, I don't know if really anyone has earned the Roy Player of the Week. It was a blowout against Pitt, but let's hope that someone earns it for the Virginia Tech game, right? Let's hope someone earns it. Let's show Syracuse some love, hopefully when they win next week against Virginia Tech, hopefully, and keep them connected, obviously, to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter referral code LOCKEDON, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more info. Roy, support the players, change the game. We talked about this post-game against Clarion, all right? Syracuse basketball has a true floor general leading this offense this season, and that is Jaquan Carlos, 6-foot senior point guard, a Hofstra transfer from this offseason. Last year, he averaged 10 points and 6 assists. He led his conference in assists per game and is also a 2-time all-conference defender. All right? I know I said not to read too much into the starting lineup again, right? Coach Autry said he's basically putting these lineups in a blender in the exhibition and seeing what sticks maybe for the regular season. Jaquan Carlos started the exhibition game at point guard, and I am fairly confident that that will hold true on Monday as well. Very similar to JJ Starling. I think that's going to be your starting backcourt duo on Monday night against Lemoyne. Here's what I'll say about Carlos, okay? What he did in the exhibition game is confirm what we were told about him. I'm not saying he's going to play up to how he played against Lemoyne, but think about what we were told about Jaquan Carlos this offseason when he transferred. When he transferred over here, what were we told about him? We were told that he is one of the best passers, he becomes maybe one of the best passers in the ACC, if not the country. Well, didn't he start the game with like 4 assists in 4 minutes in that exhibition game, right? He can pass. He's a floor general, right? We were told that he's a pretty good defender, right? His resume says he's a 2-time all-conference defender. I know it's the CAA. You still got to be a good defender overall to be an all-conference defender. I don't care what conference you're in. It's Division I. It's mid-major, but still, you got to be a good defender. And, well, he had 3 steals in the game. One of them led to a Donnie Freeman highlight reel dunk. I'm not saying he's going to have 3 assists every game. I'm not saying he's going to have 10 assists every single game. That's what he had against Clarion, right? Clarion. But he essentially confirmed the stereotypes and the narratives that we had about Jaquan Carlos before. He confirmed it. What type of player is he? He's clearly not a scoring point guard, even though he can score. That was also something we were told about him, right? He's not going to look for his own shot. He's not going to. I mean, how often did he do that against Clarion? Rarely, if ever. He still scored 14 points. But for the most part, he is looking to set up his teammates. And I think that's a really good thing for Syracuse basketball. We were told that he can score, but he's not going to look for his own shot. We were told he's an excellent passer. I think we can all agree he was an excellent passer on Saturday. We were told that he can defend. He defended at a high level. And by the way, he didn't have a turnover. There were no complaints about Jaquan Carlos in that exhibition game. He was exactly what we thought he was going to be. Again, is he always going to have 14 points and 10 assists every single game? No. I highly doubt he averages 14 and 10 this season. If he averages 14 and 10 this season combined with their roster, they're not just going to make the tournament. They're going to be a top 5 seed in the tournament. Okay? I'm not expecting 14 and 10 from Jaquan Carlos, but can he do 10 and 6 just like he did last season at Hofstra? Sure. I can totally see that coming. He's clearly a different point guard than what Syracuse has had in the past, and specifically in the last couple of seasons. It's not a knock on Judah Mintz again. I thought about this comparison while prepping for this podcast that every point guard is different, and the one that Syracuse has is a true floor general type point guard. Think about these 3 all-time great point guards in the NBA. Forget college for a second. Let's go to the NBA, right? I'm going to name you 3 all-time great point guards. I don't care where you rank them on your all-time list. I'm going to give you 3 point guards who will be in the Basketball Hall of Fame, okay? Steph Curry, Chris Paul, and Russell Westbrook. They're all 3 point guards. They all play completely differently. And you can argue one is better than the other or this guy, that guy, okay? But they're all excellent players. They're all Hall of Fame players. Steph Curry, I mean, he's unique in his own right. He can shoot the lights out. He's the greatest shooter of all time. Chris Paul is honestly, Jaquan Carlos is kind of, not going to say has the ability of Chris Paul, but it's kind of on that floor general, good defender, right? That's what he is. Chris Paul was at his best when he was scoring 17 points and getting you 15 assists, not when he's scoring 25 points and getting you 4 assists, right? And then you have Russell Westbrook, who, honestly, if you think about the comparisons, again, not necessarily ability, just kind of like an archetype. Well, Judah Mintz was a slashing point guard just like Russell Westbrook. When Russell Westbrook was in his heyday, he was a slashing point guard. He could rebound. He could pass because he had the ball all the time in his hands. Wasn't the greatest shooter. Sounds like Judah Mintz to me. That's what Judah Mintz was last year, at least at Syracuse, right? Jaquan Carlos, I think talent for talent, isn't better than Judah Mintz. But he does bring something that Judah Mintz did not. Judah Mintz was an ISO scoring type point guard. He was kind of like your Russell Westbrook mold. Jaquan Carlos is kind of like your Chris Paul mold. Again, not comparing ability, comparing an archetype. Jaquan Carlos can pass. He can defend. He's not going to look for his own shot, but he can score a little bit. He can shoot the ball at a relatively decent level. Whereas Judah Mintz was very ball dominant. He would still get assists because he had the ball all the time in his hands. And he would oftentimes try to attack the rim. That's what he was good at. He was amazing at getting to the free throw line. So it's a different type of offense led by Jaquan Carlos, but I think it could be successful for Syracuse basketball. We saw a glimpse of that against Clarion on Saturday. So I'm really liking this front court overall, at least from the starters. JJ Starling, if you can get the second half version of him, they're going to make the NCAA tournament with the rest of their personnel if they can obviously perform as expected. Jaquan Carlos, exactly what we were told. Great passer, great defender. He can score a little, can shoot a little. Good free throw shooter, by the way, too, Jaquan Carlos. Different, completely different than what Judah Mintz has been the last 2 years. It's not a knock on Judah Mintz, just a completely different type of player than Judah was. And I think for this team and for the personnel that they have, Jaquan Carlos fits a lot better than what maybe Judah Mintz would have fit this season. Now, we've gone over the starters on the Syracuse basketball backcourt, the projected starters, rather. Coming up, let's talk about the backups and who can be the most impactful backups for Syracuse basketball this season. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Speaking of Syracuse basketball, they opened the regular season on Monday, November 4th against Lemoyne. When those odds are released, be sure to check them out. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I think it's kind of tricky to project the backups for Syracuse basketball in the backcourt, but let's do it anyway, right? I think there are 4 players who project to fit that, right? Let's start off with arguably the biggest wild card on the team. Actually, I don't even really think it's arguable. I think he just is the biggest wild card, and that's Chance Westry, 6'6", redshirt sophomore. He's returning from last season. He didn't play last season. The season before that, he was over at Auburn. Now, let's start off with talking about what is good about Chance Westry, or what we've been told is good about Chance Westry. Number one, he's really versatile, okay? He can play point guard, he can play shooting guard, he can play forward. So he's incredibly versatile, of course, when he is on the floor. Number two, his teammates have said he's got excellent court vision, hence why he can play point guard. He can essentially be, if he truly is as good as what he can be, he was a 4-star recruit out of high school, he can almost be like a point forward. But what's his biggest issue? He doesn't play. Is he going to play? That's the issue, right? Availability. Some of it's not really his fault either. I'm not blaming him. It's just the reality. Dealt with injuries over at Auburn. Didn't play much there. Suffered a knee injury last season, or heading into last season. Did not return for the year, so he missed the entire season last year. We had high hopes for him, but he didn't play. He got hurt before the year started. It sucks, but that's just how it is. And then Coach Autry said, and I was really excited when he said it, that Chance Westry would be a full go. He's good to go for this upcoming season. But then, of course, he recently got sick. He has an illness. So he missed the exhibition game, and I hope he plays on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, if you're watching right now, in the next exhibition game against Slippery Rock. He got sick. I mean, guys are going to get sick. Guys are going to get hurt. It happens. I'm not blaming him. It's just we haven't seen him on the floor all that much. He's a complete wild card to me. I guess the most optimistic way to look at Chance Westry is whatever he can bring, he can help this team. That's the best way to look at it. I don't know what he's going to bring. I got no clue. I got to see him on the floor. And even if you go back to what he did at Auburn, I don't think it's fair. He was hurt, and he barely played. Let's see what Chance Westry is when he gets on the floor. He is a huge wild card for Syracuse basketball. Another backup is Elijah Moore, 6'4" shooting guard, a 4-star true freshman, better known as Choppa Moore. That's his nickname. He is known as one of the premier shooters in the class of 2024. This guy can shoot the lights out. For what it's worth, he shot 2 of 5 from three-point range in the exhibition game on Saturday. Now, I had on Jamie Shaw, On3 senior recruiting analyst, on the podcast back in April, and I asked him about Elijah Moore. And to summarize that all for you, he basically said very simple. If Elijah Moore proves that he can shoot right off the bat, he's going to play. If he can't shoot, he's not going to play. And I think that's definitely true. First of all, I think Jamie 100% knows what he's talking about. So, way too early returns on Elijah Moore. Well, he was 2 of 5 from three-point range in the exhibition game. That's 40%. If he shoots 40% for the season, again, it's a big if, but if he does that, he's going to play. You have to play him. Again, strengths and weaknesses of Syracuse basketball. They got one player who you know for certain is an elite shooter in Chris Bell. Elite shooter. Wouldn't hurt if you had a second one, right? Maybe that can be Elijah Moore. He just has to prove it. I imagine that regardless, he's going to get playing time in the beginning 3 games of the season. He's got to show out in those 3 games when he plays. He's got to prove that he can shoot in those 3 games. Because if he can, come the 4th game against Texas, he might have a big role in that one. That's all I'm saying, especially when the schedule gets tougher. He's got to perform, especially in those first 3 games of the season. I guess early returns are good from the exhibition game, 2 of 5 from three-point range. That's 40%. If he shoots 40% from three-point range this season, we'll all be pretty happy, right? Number 3, another backup here for you is Kyle Cuffe, 6'2", returning point guard. He averaged 3 points last season in about 11 minutes per game. I think Kyle Cuffe is decent enough depth. I think he's a pretty good defender when he is on the floor, but I don't envision him playing that big of a role this upcoming season, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number 1, you got a starting point guard in Jaquan Carlos, okay? So we can rule out that Kyle Cuffe is starting, okay? As long as Jaquan Carlos is healthy, Jaquan Carlos is going to start as the point guard. Number 2, there were times in that exhibition game when Jaquan Carlos wasn't on the floor that we saw J.J. Starling run the point. Again, you can take it for what it's worth. It's an exhibition game. But I think that does kind of tell you where Coach Autry is leaning right now. That if you don't have Chance Westry, who can play point guard, then he's more than fine rolling with J.J. Starling as the point guard when Carlos needs a breather. Because Carlos can't play 40 minutes a night. Can't happen. And then when Chance Westry does get back, hopefully he does get back, I imagine he will, I think he could be the backup point guard for this team. So where does that leave Kyle Cuffe? Well, he's good depth. And if he's him not playing 11 minutes a night this season, I think honestly makes the team better. I think that shows you that this team has more depth than it had last season. Last season, the team had no depth. This year, they have a lot more depth. So I don't envision him playing a huge role, but he's decent enough depth to have. And finally, let's talk about Lucas Taylor, a kind of hybrid guard or forward. I can honestly include him on Thursday's podcast when we go over the front court for Syracuse basketball. He is a senior, a transfer from Georgia State this last season. He also played at Wake Forest for 2 years prior to last year. So this is his 4th year of college basketball. Now, Lucas Taylor was in the starting lineup in the exhibition game. It was kind of a head scratcher. He was the starting small forward ahead of Chris Bell, and we're all like, whoa, really? I highly doubt it that will hold true for Monday. I just don't see it happening. I think Chris Bell is pretty much a lock to start as the small forward. I think he's a lock, but he didn't start in the exhibition. Lucas Taylor did instead. First impression watching Lucas Taylor is that he's really athletic. He had this one moment in the second half where he almost threw down a putback dunk one-handed. Didn't end up making the dunk. I think he was fouled on the play, but still, he leapt up there. It was a pretty big vertical, if you ask me, all right? Didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but he was a pretty decent shooter over at Georgia State and even in his limited sample at Wake Forest. So I think it's tough to get a read on Lucas Taylor. I imagine he's going to play some role one way or another. I think he's going to see the floor during this season. And I know that could be like a general statement like, oh, no, duh, he's going to see the floor. But I mean like he's going to probably have an actual role where you can kind of expect what he's going to do night in and night out. I don't know what it's going to be at this present moment, right? I can tell you that Jaquan Carlos is going to be the starting point guard. I can tell you that J.J. Starling is going to be the starting shooting guard in the backcourt. I can tell you that Elijah Moore, if he's shooting 40% from 3, he's going to play one way or another. Those are certainties. Now, Chance Westry, kind of a wild card, don't know. Kyle Cuffe, well, it's going to be tough for him to see the floor given the depth in the backcourt. And Lucas Taylor, I know he's going to have a role. I just can't project it right now. But that is your Syracuse backcourt for 2024-2025. Leave a comment in the comment section below your thoughts on Syracuse's backcourt this upcoming season. Is it an upgrade over last year? Is it a downgrade over last season? Leave a comment, your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kent Gibbs, they keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. Of course, talking football still right now, right? But basketball season's coming. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, tell all your friends, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And everyone, take care.